A fun fact about me is that I got the opportunity to tour a TV set, the set of The Expanse. I first got interested in code when I was a kid, attending programming workshops from organizations such as Hackergal. Originally, this was because my parents recognized the importance of programming in today's society, but it became my own personal passion that I chose to pursue as I got older. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the land that we are on today. While we meet today across Canada on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relations between nations and our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their culture. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we are and can each, in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. I'd now like to introduce Mary Walker Hope of ECOO. Mary is on the ECOO Board of Directors and has been busy chairing ECOO Camp Ontario this past August and now. The ECOO Fall Support Series. She's retired from her role of arts consultant with KPR DSB and, like a lot of retired people, seems to be more busy now than when she was teaching, if that's possible.
Thank you, Evelyn. That's lovely. I'm not going to take long at all tonight. I just want to say thank you and welcome to everybody for being here this evening. This is just such an amazing event that we're being able to host, and we're really thrilled that ECOO is able to do this. This is the fourth event in the series, but for me, it was one that I was really looking forward to a lot because I really do want to hear what the girls have to say about their journey and what they have to tell us as educators about what we can do to help support and think about the gender equity issue that's going on right now in our educational world. So by looking at the banter that I saw just beforehand as well, I know that there's a lot of people here who are really excited about hearing what you have to say. So with that, I'd like to turn it right back over to you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Mary. This student-led panel includes the voices of student ambassadors from Hackergal. Hackergal is a charitable organization that inspires girls across Canada to explore the opportunities in code. With women vastly underrepresented in the tech industry, Hackergal strives to inspire a new wave of Canadian female coders to bring equality to the booming industry. Let's kick things off with a polling activity with the audience. I will launch the poll for your audience participation. I'm going to ask you 3 questions to test your knowledge on gender equity in tech. Ready? While you're answering the polling questions, let's go over today's agenda. After we complete our introduction, Isla will jump into the first half of the discussion on underrepresentation and gender equality in tech. Then we'll do a this or that activity, and in order to break up the panel, and then we will have part 2 of the panel specifically discussing strategies and tips for teachers. We'll have a short audience Q&A for any questions that you may have. And then I will have some closing remarks and thank you all for coming for the evening. And then you can have the rest of your evening to enjoy yourself, even more than you already are at this panel. So I'm just going to give a second to let you all vote, and then we can have a look at the results. Okay, I think that's been long enough. So as I can see for question 1, the majority of responses, 67%, said that 23% of people work in STEM, and that in working in STEM are women specifically. So that is the correct answer, that 23%. Question 2, we have a tie. 33% voted 2% and 33% voted 13%. Well, the correct answer is that that number has only increased by 2% in the past 30 years. For question 3, 78% of you said that women were foundational pioneers in writing software for machines, and that is correct. Women were those pioneers. So now before I turn it over to Isla, please feel free to post your questions to the panel through the chat or audience Q&A. And now over to you, Isla and panelists.
Sorry about that. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Isla Farnud, and I am a Hackergal ambassador as well as a grade 10 student from Toronto, Ontario. Today, I'm joined by 4 other lovely Hackergal ambassadors, all with various backgrounds and experiences in technology. On the panel today, we're actually going to be covering the gender gap, as well as more specifically the gender gap within classrooms and how teachers might be able to foster a better community and support girls within the classroom in getting into STEM and technology. So before we get into the meat of the panel, I want to help you guys get to know a little bit more about the panelists. So we're going to have a bit of an introduction from each of them. So if each of you could go over a fun fact and talk a little bit about your experiences with code and how you've actually gotten in, how you're involved with it right now, that'd be super great. Maybe Vivani, if you want to get us started.
Hello everyone, my name is Vivani and I am a grade 9 student and I live in Calgary, Alberta. One fun fact about me is that I can play the flute. I first got started with code in a summer camp where I learned HTML and CSS. I was immediately intrigued in the topic and started learning code on my spare time. One of the fun things that I'm learning right now is Python.
Super cool. Yeah, Python is really interesting, and HTML and CSS is definitely a really great coding language. It's great for websites and learning a ton about that. All right. Maybe Jeanette, if you want to go next.
Yeah, for sure. So hi everyone, my name is Jeanette. I'm currently a grade 12 student studying in Toronto, Ontario. And a fun fact about me is that I have a twin sister. And when it comes to my coding journey, I first got involved with code by taking a grade 10 computer science course. And from that, being able to use my creativity and problem solving skills to make programs and code, that really intrigued me. And so even today, I continue to self-teach myself about coding, and I'm currently learning about the front-end developing languages like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and will hopefully be moving on to back-end. So that's a bit about me.
Super cool. We have 2 HTML and CSS girls right now. Maybe Charly, if you want to give us your little intro.
Hi, I'm Charly. I'm a grade 9 student from Ottawa, Ontario. A fun fact about me is that I like to do anything that can display my creativity and just be free and do whatever I want with it. How I got involved in code, I think it was first time was in grade 5 with my very tech savvy teacher, and we got to code some robots to travel along a line. So that was very cool for me.
Sounds like a ton of fun. I wish I was able to code robots when I was in grade 5. All right, I guess last but not least, we have Nicole.
Hello everyone, my name is Nicole and I'm a grade 12 student studying near Peterborough, Ontario. A fun fact about me is that I have extremely flexible joints. And as for my coding experience, I was first truly involved in code when I took a computer science course in grade 10. I had no previous experience, but I found that I really enjoyed the creative freedom and problem solving aspect of coding. I've taken a computer science course every year at my school, and I dabble with some coding in my free time as well.
I totally agree. That's super cool. Yeah, you have a lot of freedom to code whatever you want when you're actually doing coding. So it's really enjoyable and kind of like a breath of fresh air from your other subjects. All right, so now we're gonna switch gears a bit and go a little bit more into the gender gap in Canada. So I actually recently came across a statistic which honestly shocked me. And it stated that only 23% of people working in STEAM fields are women, and also that this number has only increased by 2% within the past 30 years. So how would you guys say that this statistic makes you feel, especially as like a girl who's pursuing a STEAM field? And maybe Nicole, if you want to get us started on that.
So at first, obviously, it makes me feel a little bit disheartened. It shows that while we have come a long way in terms of gender progress, there's still a lot of obstacles and stigma associated with women pursuing STEAM careers. But at the same time, I feel really inspired because it gives me a cause to try to decrease the gender gap in my work with Hackergal. And I'm hopeful that the younger generation, which is the girls we're working with right now with Hackergal, will have better access and support when pursuing STEAM fields.
Yeah, definitely. We get to see like all these women coming together to try and bridge this gender gap within this area. I think I noticed that like Charly, you were like nodding your head, right? Do you want to go next?
I want to talk. Okay, so I feel mostly frustrated with knowing that statistic, because I feel like issues like this are highlighted often in our like popular channels like social media, and yet we're having such a big kind of like issue like how slow it's going to improvement. So it makes me really frustrated with how slow it's going. But at the same time, I can't ignore that 2% increase. It makes me really happy to see that, because it just shows that if we keep pushing to teach and inspire the next generation, that will eventually get to an equal playing field.
Totally agree. Like, you definitely have to think of these things in a positive light, because we're still getting improvement, so we're going in the right direction. All right, so I'm gonna branch out a little bit more to talk a bit more generally about like underrepresentation and gender equity in tech. So I wanted to ask you guys, how would you actually describe the gender gap? Maybe if Vivani, do you want to get us started?
For sure. I would describe the gender gap as a barrier between men and women in various fields, mostly involving STEM. It is one that women get treated unfairly or unprivileged in certain fields, and it often involves the stigma that men are better suited and more capable for such tasks. With this mindset, I think men could better support their female counterparts and help them enter these fields and close the gap between the amount of men and women. And I believe that bridging this gap will help STEM fields to become more diverse, which would ensure that workplaces are approaching problems from a variety of perspectives and genders.
Yeah, totally agree. I think everyone has their own part to play in helping bring gender equity to STEM fields. I think, Jeanette, I noticed you were like also nodding your head along, if you want to build on that.
Yeah, for sure. So building on what Vivani had mentioned before, so the gender gap to me personally is the inequality between men and women when it comes to, let's say, leadership positions, when it comes to salaries, like the gender pay gap, which exists, and when it comes to other stuff as well. So we are like societal expectations. So we live in a society where it's commonly a stereotype that men are more well progressed in the STEM field, and they take on better roles, technical roles, and can go into senior positions. And for the gender gap, it's been existing for like a few decades now. And with the lack of female representation, we as a society are missing out on diverse perspectives, opinions, and ultimately the chance to foster innovation, because we're completely missing out the perspective like a whole group of people. So this issue requires us all to step in and take action. It's not just one person, not just one group of people, but rather both men and women to help bridge the gap, the gender gap. And it's a collective effort that we can work towards. So that is the gender gap, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and how
totally.
we can work towards it.
Yeah, I think both of you guys touched on how like everyone has their own part to play in helping reduce this like gender gap and bringing gender equity to the fields. So, I mean, it's a pretty important way that we're going to actually help bring gender equity into the fields. Yeah. All right. So far, we've mainly been covering like general topics and stuff, but I know that I've actually heard from girls around my age that they've had like experiences within the classroom where they felt the impact of the lack of women in STEM. So I was wondering if any of you guys have had like actual personal experiences where you've felt that like impact and what they were or are.
I can take that. So I guess my first experience where I really felt the impact of the gender gap is when I was in middle school. I actually joined a robotics club. And I remember being with a few girls at first who later dropped out. And I never felt like I truly fit in. And I would sometimes get these comments being like, oh, you're actually pretty good at this for a girl. And it felt pretty invalidating. And it was at the age where like I felt weird being the only girl in an all male club. So I ended up dropping out actually around like a year later, even though I really enjoyed robotics. And now in high school, I have a lot of friends who will tell me that, oh, like they suck at computer science or they suck at a science or math before actually taking the class. And this is definitely a problem that I see in girls way more than guys, and how they'll doubt themselves before actually trying it. And I also attended a physics competition last year where I felt really invalidated and unheard. I felt like my ideas weren't being listened to, and I would contribute certain things that would immediately get shot down. And when later on a male teammate of mine said the exact same idea without giving me credit, my team thought it was a really excellent idea, and it just made me feel like they weren't even listening to what I was saying.
Definitely, that's so frustrating. I wouldn't know what I would have done in that situation. So props to you for staying calm. Or yeah, so maybe Jeanette, if you want to build on that.
Yeah, for sure. So my experience was kind of similar to what Nicole had mentioned. So I recall taking like a computer science course, specifically a machine learning course during the summer, in which I discovered that almost all of my classmates were male. And from those discussing in forums to those actually who were presently mentors there were all male. And to me, it didn't really make sense because the material we were learning could easily be learned by anybody, regardless of their gender. So it just goes to show that we are still a long way from progress and that we really need to step in. So that was one of the experiences that kind of made me feel the impact of Black women in STEM. And the second one was with one of my classmates. We were having a discussion with one of my male classmates, and the topic of career aspirations and university programs came up. And to that, I responded that I'm interested in computer science, software engineering, the tech side. And he left a very shocked expression, like, oh, wait, you're into code. Like, I would have never expected that. And that to me signals that there is still the stereotype that women are not interested in the tech field. And yeah, so those were the two experiences that kind of made me feel the impact of Black women in tech. But ultimately, that also, these experiences kind of forced me and kind of encouraged me to kind of step up and kind of encourage those around me to take action and kind of explore these fields, especially like my female friends, because they would usually doubt themselves. So I would kind of be the encourager to kind of encourage them. So those were both of my experiences.
Yeah, I think it's super great that you're encouraging your friends. I think I was also pushed to like go into code from all the support that I was getting from my friends around me. So it's definitely disheartening when you can feel all of that negative influence coming from the people around you. All right, so we've talked a little bit about how like there actually is an issue within the classroom, which is quite unfortunate. And right now there's like initiatives like Hackergal, right, who are working towards bringing gender equity not just into the classroom, but also just like within the world. In STEM fields. So one question I was wondering about, or I wanted to pose to you guys is, what do you guys think will be the biggest challenge for the next generation of women which are going to go into tech that these organizations will have to help mitigate?
I'll actually answer that. The biggest challenge, I think, is going to be getting in there and staying inspired and determined. Because there'll be times where they'll think things are going to be unjust and they'll feel like they can't do anything about it. Having to get so far and then have like an impenetrable wall to stop them can be detrimental to some people. So having that quality of staying inspired and determined is something that will get them over that challenge and further them in their work.
Yeah, totally. I think, Vivani, did you want to add on?
Yeah, sure. Definitely adding on to what Charly said, I think the biggest challenge for the next generation of women going into tech would be to overcome the stereotypes and the gender gap involving STEM. So the next generation of women in tech need to realize that even though there may be more males in these fields, that they still have the capability and the skills to perform in these environments, and that they can overcome all the hurdles and the challenges that their gender may cause them. And I think overcoming this hurdle with confidence and courage could definitely help more women thrive in these environments, and also could be key in helping bridge the gender gap.
Totally, yeah. All right. And we're going to switch gears a little bit because that was a bit of a heavy topic and we've been talking quite a bit. And we're going to move into a short game that's called This or That. So basically the way that this game works is it's sort of like would you rather questionnaire where I'm going to give you two tech related things and I'm going to ask you to pick between the two. And I think each of the panelists should have a pen and paper ready. So if you guys could get that out right now, that'd be great. And I think, Kumiko, I think we're gonna get started. So yeah,
Ready
all right.
when you are.
All right, I'm gonna get started with the first question, which is Android or iOS? All right, if each of the panelists could hold up their piece of paper with their answer on it. Looks like almost everyone, vast majority of people are iOS here. And I also noticed in the chat that I think 2 people also said iOS. So we seem to have a lot of Apple users here today. All right, I'm gonna move on to the second question. So panelists get ready and get ready to type in the chat your answer. It's front-end development or back-end development. All right, panelists, time to show your answers. All right, 3 front, 1 back. And I saw in the chat, quite a few people wrote front and we have someone who likes both. And I guess you two back end lovers can maybe talk more about it later, but yeah. All right, next question. In-person or remote learning? All right, panelists. We have another 3-to-1 ratio. Different people this time though, and in-person, and remote. And in the chat, I see quite a few in-person. So it seems to be that everyone likes talking to people in person. Yeah. So, all right, next question is going to be Spotify or Apple Music? Okay, panelists, your answers? Oh, now we have unanimous decision, Spotify. In the chat, I also noticed that there was quite a few Spotifyers and one person who voted for the radio. All right. And I think we're going to move into the next question now, which is mobile games or video games. Where video games are probably like PS4, like controller games, or like PC games. All right. Panelists. Oh, we have video games, and both. Quite interesting. All right. Yeah, I mean, with video games, they're usually a lot more powerful, right? So you get more out of it. Okay, we're going to do the next question, which is text or phone calls. All right, time to show your answers. Wow, 3-1 phone calls to text. And in the chat, I think it was pretty similar, actually. We had like 3-2 or something. Yeah, I mean, phone calls are definitely a lot more personal, but I might actually choose text myself since it's a bit more informal. Okay, next question. Desktop or laptops? Okay. Panelists, your answers, please. Laptop. Vivani, desktop. Vivani, you seem to be the odd one out quite a bit recently, yeah. I think in the chat, everyone seems to be saying laptop. Yeah, laptops are quite convenient. Yes. All right, now this is our last question. And well, it might be controversial considering what type of a user you are, but it is Mac or Windows. Okay, the big reveal. Panelists. 50-50. All right, and in the chat, I feel like we had quite a few Macs at the beginning, and then we got some Windows and a Chromebook. So yeah, I feel like there's definitely pros and cons that come with the different operating systems. All right, yeah. So thank you everyone in the chat for participating. That was really, really fun. And thank you panelists for playing along. It was really interesting to hear about all of your guys' tech preferences and stuff. So we're going to move on to the next section of the panel, where we're going to talk a bit more about supporting gender equity like within the classroom and like tips and tricks surrounding that. So our first question that we have is panelists, what are some like strategies or tools or even just resources that have helped you learn more about technology or made you a bit more interested about technology?
Okay, I'll answer that. Okay. So one thing that you can do is just encourage diversity by encouraging others that are inside and outside of your class to take more opportunities and challenges in the STEM field. actively look for those activities for your students and have them actively participate in them. And encourage them to make mistakes by teaching them how to learn from them and further in their work.
Yeah, totally. Making mistakes is like part of learning, and oftentimes when you're young, you don't really realize that and you're scared to make mistakes, but it's super important for the learning process. Yeah. I think, Nicole, do you maybe want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think my computer science teacher uses a lot of strategies that help sustain my interest in tech. And this is not just because he's on the call, but shout out to him. And basically, he will give us specifications of finished programs that are usually pretty simple. And then we'll try to code the programs. And so each assignment sort of becomes like a puzzle and a problem that you have to solve. And it's a pretty challenging way of learning, but I think it keeps me really engaged. And I always feel like I'm improving and getting better at coding. And we also finish off every year with a final project that's independent, and we can code anything we want, whether it's a game, an app that solves a problem, or a piece of generative art. And I find that computer science gives me a lot more creative freedom and independence than I get from any other class, which definitely helps me sustain my interests in tech.
I think you mentioned this a little bit in your introduction, but totally, the freedom that comes with coding is really enjoyable, especially at school. Yeah. All right, so we're going to focus a little bit more on the specific, supporting gender equity. So do any of you guys have like suggestions on how teachers can like foster a community of inclusion for like females within the classroom and help them get involved in STEAM education?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. So I think I have a couple of strategies, but I'll say the first one. So I feel like it's very important to tell students about the impact they can have working in this field. For example, let's take the example of the COVID-19 app that's being used nationally. Like, look at how much impact it's having on our lives positively. It's keeping us safe in many ways, and all it took was just an idea to be executed by people working in tech. So if you see a problem in the world that needs solving, you can use tech as a way to kind of solve that problem. So that's a great aspect of tech, and I feel like students should really know about that. And another one would be to allow students to know that they don't have to be geniuses to be able to code or be able to write a program. Because in movies, we often see that there's like this dude, he's wearing nerdy glasses behind the laptop, writing all this advanced code, algorithms, and the other characters don't know what he's doing. He's just on his own. He's so smart. But that is not true. You don't need to be a genius. The only thing you do need, however, is perseverance and the right mindset. I feel like that's really something you should have. And I feel like learning to code is like learning a new language. Like, for example, if you see someone speaking fluently in French, it might seem intimidating at first because you don't know anything. But once you actually take that first step and start that journey, it becomes way easier than before. Because for me, if I didn't take the first step, I would not have been where I am right now. And I often encourage my friends to just take that step. Like, pursue what you want to pursue, but also explore other stuff as well along the way, because you never know where your passion might lie. That's the second tip. The third would be to encourage students about stuff that are happening outside the classroom, like hackathons and speaking events. Because I recall being an attendee at many of the speaking events, tech events, and just witnessing females that look like me talking about their accomplishments and their goals and how much they achieved really inspires me and motivates me and makes me realize that, hey, this can be me as well. Like, I have the same potential, and they act as role models for me. So going to these tech events really helped inspire and encourage me. So I feel like every student should kind of feel that. And I feel like it's important for teachers to kind of make students alert of these opportunities. And hackathons are also a great way to know about projects and coding with the team. So that's definitely something I would recommend. So those are the three things I would recommend teachers on this webinar.
Yeah, I think those are all really, really great points. Like, just hearing them, I feel like if those were in my classroom when I was younger, I would definitely become like quite a bit more interested in coding.
Definitely.
Vivani, do you also want to speak on that?
Yeah, sure. Adding on to what Janet said, I think in order to foster a classroom with inclusion and diversity, I think one point would be to encourage everyone in the class to participate in discussions and give their own thought to certain things within the classroom, even if it doesn't have to be much, but like even one contribution can make people really involved in what they're doing. And another suggestion would be to encourage design challenge thinking and encourage independent thinking and create a space of innovation, creativeness. And I think especially with independence, I think students can focus on their own interests in tech, which would help them and motivate them and encourage them to pursue a tech field in the future. And again, as Janet said, hackathons are really cool, and all the extracurricular opportunities that we might have out there. Just telling the students about those and to encourage them to go beyond their learning is really, really motivating.
Totally, yeah. I think the first time I went to a hackathon, it was quite a different environment, and it opened my eyes to just how big the coding community is. All right, we're gonna move on to what is our last question for this panel before we switch on to audience Q&A. So my last question to you guys is, what is one thing that you believe is essential to help females enter tech or has motivated you to enter tech in the future?
I can take that. So one thing that I think is really important is having role models, which is essentially what companies like Hackergal and mentorships are there to accomplish. We want to give younger girls more female role models that work in tech so they can truly explore the possibilities of everything they can possibly do and anyone they can be. And just a quick example, my role models when I was young were always female authors, as I loved reading and writing. And so it was always something I envisioned myself doing in the future. When I got into robotics, I didn't really have any female role models, whether those were older students, older female students, or family friends, or just people like I didn't have social media. And there was no one to tell me that coding was really cool and it was something I could pursue in the future. And it was not sort of geeky to like tech. And I think having role models also teaches you about the industry. It gives you advice to deal with situations where gender can be a limitation, and it will motivate you to go into tech because you want to be like your role models in the future.
Yeah, totally. I can definitely relate to having writer role models when I was younger and really into reading. I think, Vivani, I also noticed you were nodding your head a bit if you want to add on.
For sure. I definitely agree with Nicole that role models are really helpful and important in tech. But adding on to that, I think one thing that would be essential in motivating more females to enter tech would be companies like Hackergal. They host hackathons, discussions, and workshops. I think Hackergal really motivates females to enjoy and pursue tech. And especially by personal experience, I can say that Hackergal has really motivated me to pursue a tech future. And I think companies just like these can really make a strong impact in helping women enter tech, which really helps in both confidence and also provides females with kind of a structure to enter tech.
Yeah, I can also really relate to Hackergal helping me get into my learn that my interest is coding, since it was kind of like only the second time that I learned was like into coding, and having all my friends there with me at like their camps and their hackathons were was like really inspiring and really motivating for me. All right, so as I mentioned, that was our last question. So that concludes our panel discussion portion of this event. So thank you, audience members, for sitting with us, and thank you, panelists, for all of your insightful answers. And now I think we're going to move on into our audience Q&A. All right, so the first question that we have is, how did you each get to where you are today, And what was a big influential moment?
Nicole, do you want to go first? Or
Yeah, Jeanette, I think you mentioned.
Okay, perfect. So for me personally, the biggest moment where I realized I really wanted to go into tech was, I mentioned before, the computer science class, but then later it was a hackathon I attended, which was Hackergal's hackathon. And I just remember just having a community of girls to code with, and it was so encouraging. Like, I just felt like, hey, we're in this together, we can do it. And just that moment of empowerment together, just, it was unforgettable. And here I am today as an ambassador, which feels great talking about it. So yeah, hopefully that answered the question.
I think Nicole, you wanted to go next?
Yeah, sure. A really powerful moment for me is that I know when I was younger in middle school, I always felt like it was kind of geeky and I like kind of shied away from robotics and programming and coding. And then in high school, I remember telling people I was in a computer studies class, and then someone was like, "Oh, that's so cool." And somewhere along the line, like we kind of made this shift. At least I changed schools, and I felt more confident in what I loved doing. So I kind of made the shift, and I saw the people around me make the shift, and where knowing computer science is so cool, and wanting to pursue computer science is such a cool career because there's so many opportunities, and the future of the world is really technology. So yeah, that was really influential moment for me.
All right, Charly.
I think okay, well, I think from like the beginning, like something that I really liked to like, even if I didn't play it, Minecraft was a big thing that I like as a kid. I was like, I really like that, and I saw it. And I was like, I wonder how it works, and it was like, wow, it's like blocks, but like it's complicated blocks to me, you know. So so like when I got into code, I went to like a tech club, and then that went bad, and I just wasn't very inspired. But then, I think when I was like grade what's grade 6, I heard about this club like at my school called Hackergal, and I was like, I want to join it, but I couldn't because I was in grade 6. So I waited till grade 7, and I had this feeling, and I was like, to my best friends, I was like, guys, let's go to this club, let's do this, right? And I was like, this is actually fun. I like this. So that's what made me like really realize like, dang, I can actually do stuff, you know? And it was like really empowering for me with that.
All right, Vivani, last but not least.
So one of the things that really influenced me in tech is I had a summer camp where I actually learned HTML and CSS. So the instructors there were really engaging, and then immediately intrigued me to participate in the conversation, and then taught me all these cool stuff. And after that, I also discovered Hackergal online events as similar to the other ambassadors, and I started attending those, and I got more female role models. I got introduced to more female role models, and then that's where I really got inspired to join tech.
Okay, moving on to the next question. We have, what makes code so inspiring / empowering for you guys?
I can answer that question. So what kind of hooks me to continue to code is just the ability that I know that when I continue to code, I can create impact, and I can inspire other girls to kind of explore the field as well. So as I mentioned earlier, I remember for one of the questions, I mentioned that when you go into tech field, you can actually create tons of impact, whether that be by an app, or that be developing a certain technology to solve a huge problem. So just that, having that vision for me, I just really want to create impact in the world. And I can do that through tech, really encourages me to continue and strive to get better and better. So that's one thing that keeps me hooked onto it.
All right. Nicole, want to go? Maybe we can keep the same order, and then if you haven't thought of your answer yet, you can just pass.
So, what makes code really inspiring to me is that a lot of technology actually solves a problem that is very prevalent in our society. And it's really cool that you can help a group of people through coding and through technology. And that's really, really interesting to me. And just to build on to Jeanette, I completely agree. Code is just so limitless and you can really create anything you want.
Okay, I think I'm going next. So, the thing that inspires me about code is the complexity. I just see it, and I'm like, wow, human people made that, and I was like, it was like so inspiring. I'm like, maybe I could like do something like that, like someday. So I look at it, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make that a goal, like someday, you know. So that's like what inspires me, kind of thing. You know, make something complex that human society uses.
So what makes code really inspiring for me is that positive impacts that technology can have in the world. As like the previous ambassador said, technology can allow us to do so many things and solve so many problems that in the world that are really important for us to solve, I guess. And and again, technology and coding is so fun to work with. It's like a puzzle to me, and it's really interesting to see how we can code to and yeah.
All right. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. This is, would trying to run an all-girls section of computer science be beneficial or needed? It's a bit of a tricky one.
That's a good question. Let's see. So is running a computer science for girls only needed, or was that the question? Can you repeat it,
It's
please?
like, do you think it'll be like beneficial or needed, or like not beneficial or needed at all? Just like, what are your thoughts on having an all-girls section of computer science?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that it's a good thing, like having girls support each other in their journey to learn how to code and just working on it together with girls. I only feel like you should also include guys in a way because there should be this interaction. But yeah, having like a girls only computer science club, for example, let's say, I feel like that's very empowering as well. Being with your female friends and classmates to do work on cool stuff is very cool. So
Nicole, do you want to add on?
I'd like to kind of present a different opinion, and I really like everything you said, Jeanette, and I completely agree that there are a lot of benefits, but at the same time, I don't think that computer science should be segregated, because if you do choose to pursue computer science in the future, you will have to learn to work with a lot of men, and you will have to learn how to work sometimes in a majority male environment. And I think that it unfortunately is a skill that like many girls and women have to learn to develop. And I just think that a lot of teachers try really hard. Like, I've never felt excluded or unheard or felt like my gender wasn't ever an issue in computer science, in my computer science class, but I can't speak for everyone, obviously.
Yeah, totally. You have to build that sort of like thick skin sometimes, and that you can only grow through like practice and going through difficult situations. Definitely. Shauna, want to add on?
Honestly, I think what we're like aiming for is like equality, right? So if you like making something exclusively for girls to like empower them, I think that's kind of like imbalanced now. So you're putting all the attention to them. It's kind of not weighing out. So like I feel like if they could do it in like a different way where there's like still like diversity in the classes, like I don't know, maybe like have like a male, but like you shouldn't over, think things kind of thing. So yeah, so it's like equality is something like it's very sensitive where you want to empower them, yes, but you don't want to over put your priorities into them because that's not equality. Everyone has a part, you see? So That's what I think.
Vivani, I can't actually see you.
Okay. So I definitely agree with what the other ambassador said. And I think starting out with a female environment, I guess, really empowers and motivates girls. But as you get into the future and as you get into higher courses, I think it's really important to develop the skill that you're interacting with other people in other tech environments as well.
Yeah. So similar to Jeanette's point, I think we all have sort of a consensus on our view on that. All right, next question is, who are some, or, well, two kind of similar questions are like, who are some of the female role models you have who are in the tech fields, and what are their tech successes? I think there's also another question which is a bit similar. So if you want to answer them together, you can. And it's, would you, any great female tech role models that you would recommend for a case study in the classroom? So if you do have a role model that you think is viable option for a case study in the classroom, you can totally mention it.
Yeah, for sure. So for role models, I have too many. So first starting off in tech, it was definitely my first computer science teacher. She was female as well. So just her vibe and her encouragement, really, she was my role model back then, and she still is. And so it's kind of odd because now in my new school, I don't really have any female computer science teachers, but I'm really lucky to have her as my first female computer science teacher. So she was my very first role model to kind of go into tech. So I really am very appreciative towards her efforts and encouraging me and the class as a whole. So I would definitely say she really inspires me to this day as well.
Nicole.
Oh yeah, I'm actually blanking out on a lot of female role models, but I do think social media, I do follow quite a lot of women in tech on social media. I just blanking out on their names. And I think that social media has been a way for me to sort of look up to a lot of women, really young women who work in tech. And I think, yeah, I think I'll just pass on this question.
All right. Charly or Vivani, if any of you guys want to speak.
I don't like know like a lot of like female tech people, but like I think like the people that like are like closest to me that like inspired me the most is like my teacher that first started the like had like the club at our school of Hackergal that I used to be in, and like all you people on this panel, like you ambassadors and like the people in Hackergal, like them, that you guys like. You guys are amazing, and I'm just looking at you guys, and I'm just looking at myself. I'm like, oh, I'm not that good. You guys are talking all these stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. So like, you just impressed me with like all your knowledge, and I'm like, dang, I wish I could like be like good someday. So like, that's what inspires me is like you people.
So I'll add on to that. So I think that I don't really remember much of female role models right now. But I think definitely within my family, many people have inspired me, and definitely Hackergal ambassadors and Hackergal itself. If you're trying to do a case study for a female role model, I think Ada Lovelace would be a really inspiring one. I think she was like called the first computer programmer, and I really look up to her. So that's really cool.
If I'm allowed to add my own role model, I think I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her last name, but Jennifer Doudna, I think, the creator of CRISPR. I really look up to her, and I've listened to some of her podcasts, and she's a really, really bright woman, and her ideas are super, super interesting. So that's my take on it. All right, unfortunately, that's all of the time that we have today for the panel. So again, I'm going to say thank you to the panelists for all of your wonderful answers, and also thank you for the audience for giving us such wonderful questions for this Q&A section. I'm going to pass the mic back to Evelyn, who is going to wrap things up for this event.
That concludes our student panel discussion on gender equity in tech. We hope you learned more about some of the things that our panelists discussed, such as their own personal experiences and what's inspired them, and generally what goes through the minds of girls who are learning technology, like who are learning coding and technology for the first time. And specifically motivating your girls in computer science and some practical tips and tricks to bring back to your classroom. We really appreciate your time and participation. So some upcoming events at Hackergal in order to get involved with us would be the Hackergal Day on December 12th, as well as we have the Empowering Student Voice for Creative Coding Educator Workshop on December 9th. And we have workshops that are going on weekly, or you could sign up for a virtual coding workshop for your classroom. Now, finally, I want to thank Tanya for we would really like to give special thanks to Tanya, the Hackergal's program manager, for helping us to plan this event and for working behind the scenes. So thank you, Tanya. And now Mary Walker Hope would like to say a few closing remarks.
Hi there. Oh, just a very, very few closing remarks is right. I think everybody in the audience can see why we needed to have this happen tonight. And girls, it was amazing. I was writing down things constantly that I know I'm going to quote you now on Twitter and then put things out. So watch the Hackergal Twitter handle, and you'll be seeing some things of how you've inspired me as well. The Hackergal organization, as you know, is doing all of these things like hackathons. So I know the girls were very passionate about the fact that get your students involved in those kind of things. And I think that that's one big takeaway from tonight as well, is that extracurricular thing that's coming. And for teachers, for ECOO, we have a few more things that are still coming up in the fall series for everybody as well. There's a couple events happening Monday night and then next Thursday. So you can take a look at our website to see those. And we're actually going to invite the girls and some other organizations back. We have a winter and a spring set of series coming in as well. And so we definitely would like to make this more than a one-time event. So thank you all very, very much. And I'll go back to you as well then.
I think that's all we have for this workshop, and everyone's good to go.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Hacker Gals. You did such a good job. If I can I'm going to stop the recording now,